Your vote on SSPTV News.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Your Vote 2022. My friends, I'm totally confused. We have so many changes going on in the state of Pennsylvania that I have no idea what's going on with this redistricting. And I hope at the end of today's show, I will learn something and you will learn something. Let me first introduce our guest that'll be on the show today, Ken Jackson, who is a reporter for the Standing Speaker. You know him very well. He's joining us via phone. We have, of course, our usuals, except Mike DeCosmo is tied up. We have Rick Morelli, who, as you know, is the former chairman of the Luzerne County Council. We have Lisa Shigard. I got to behave because she's our news director. And we have Charles McAwee, who, he got a big title, my friends. He's the editor of Real Clear, Pennsylvania. And we have a few guests, and hopefully we can make some sense of this. First, I want to welcome to the show our first guest is Senator Dave Argel. Senator, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
That's good. Now, I opened the show by saying I am totally confused. Let me ask you a question, Senator. I know we talked about this when I interviewed you at the Schuylkill Chamber about this redistricting. Why in God's name have we decided to change things in the state of Pennsylvania when everything was, in order and everything was going well? Like, who comes up with these things and why?
The state constitution and the national constitution require legislative and congressional redistricting every 10 years. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of confusion, but it's been required for more than 200 years.
Okay, with that being said, all right, could they just say, look, everything seems to be doing fine. Why don't we just keep with the way it is? I know there's a lot of confusion in this when they're redistricting. So what's the process? Who comes in? Who makes the changes? Who decides?
There was a Supreme Court decision in the early 1960s, Baker versus Carr, that changed everything. It's known as the one person, one vote rule. And the idea is you had areas that were growing, that you had areas that were shrinking. And so every 10 years after a census, the courts have been very strict in requiring that the redistricting happens. The legislature does the congressional redistricting, but for the legislative seats, there is a bipartisan 5-person commission that draws the maps. And so there's two similar processes, but the one we get to vote on and the one we do not get to vote on.
Okay, so are you happy of these changes that have been made in the state of Pennsylvania?
But yes, I think my new district makes sense. For the first time, I'm going to represent the people in the Hazleton area. They've been my neighbors forever. I will also represent all of Carbon County. I had represented Carbon County in the past, then it was taken away. Now it's back. So it's very confusing, but I do think Schuylkill County, Southern Luzerne County, Carbon County, that is an area that makes sense.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw this to the panel. Kent, do you have any questions for Senator Argel?
Senator, just as your district now includes Hazleton, the representatives district also will be with Hazleton and then northern Schuylkill County. How do you think those two areas will work together, whoever wins that race in the new 116th district? And how will you work with them as well, whoever that winner is in that race?
I hope to share offices with them. I have extra space in my district office in Monterey City, the office that was begun by Senator Rhodes many years ago. And so that's in the new district. And I hope that they would share offices with me in the Hazleton area. Again, many of them are in the Hazleton School District between East Union Township and North Union, McAdoo and Klein. And so it's an adjustment. It's change, but I do think we can work it out.
Good to see you again. I'd like to ask you, and it's more of just your opinion, obviously with all these changes going on, one of the big changes and one of the things we've heard, a friend of ours who came on this show many times was Senator Yudicek, and with the transformation of this, he would have been running against Senator Baker, but now John Yudichak is, I guess, taking his hat out of the ring. And so I guess wanted to pick your mind on that and how that's going to play out.
I'm going to miss John Yudichak. I mean, I plan on working with him all the way through November. John is a friend. He's agreed to help me to meet some new people in Luzerne County and in Carbon County. He's a great committee chairman. I don't think we've heard the last of John, but no, we will continue to work together, and I will miss not seeing him every day on the floor of the Senate.
Yeah, definitely a great guy. And again, I echo that. I think there's a lot more for Senator Yudichak out there, but just wanted to get your opinion. So thank you.
How confusing will this be? Sam said it's very confusing, and it is. People now, some people, the people in the old 116th will be voting on April 5th, and then another election in May for the primary. Do you think we're going to have extremely low turnout, or do you think people are paying attention to what's going on?
The House seat is much more confusing than what I'm going through in the Senate redistricting. And you're right. The fact that the people that are on the ballot in April are not allowed to be on the ballot in May because they live in the old district, but they don't live in the new district. It's very confusing, but it's also very important. I mean, we're talking about, someone that's going to be seated in the House of Representatives. So I suspect the turnout won't be super high. I just hope it's not super low because it is an important election.
Question about the redistricting process. Redistricting inevitably injects that debate about the partisan nature of the process, especially in this past year, and really since 2018 about the state Supreme Court, an elected judicial body that now has a Democrat majority since 2015. In 2017, a bipartisan group of former governors, including former governors Schweiger, Ridge, Thornburg, and Rendell, had an op-ed in the Philadelphia Inquirer calling for merit appointment of state Supreme Court or statewide appellate judges rather than statewide elections. Due to the partisan nature of the state Supreme Court and what we have seen with redistricting, in your view from a reform perspective, what's your perspective on that debate?
That's one of those when I teach it in the classes that I've taught over the last 30 years at several different colleges. I think we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. If we allow the people to vote, as we have in Pennsylvania for a long time, it is a very political process as to picking our judges. Some have said, well, maybe it makes more sense to pick county judges. Those are people we at least have a chance of knowing or getting to meet, as compared to statewide judges. Let's face it, we don't see statewide judge candidates very often. There's 13 million people in this state. But if we go the route that has been suggested, what's called merit selection, it's still political. It may not be putting people on the ballot, but it has political figures, it has political calculations. These new judges under that model, they're not going to be picked by the College of Vestal Virgins. And so it's either an inside game or an open game. And either way, they both have their pluses and minuses. I've studied both, quite honestly, and neither system is perfect.
How political was this decision in redistricting, or was it a fair way to go about the redistrict?
Quite honestly, I don't think it was as fair as it should have been. The legislative redistricting, the chairman voted with us a few times, but most of the time he voted with the Democrats. I'm happier with the Senate map than I am, quite honestly, statewide with the House map. I think there the chairman was almost universally lined up with the House Democratic leader on every single vote. And then when we get to the congressional map, the governor simply refused to talk to me. He refused to talk to my colleagues. And so the map that the legislature approved for Congress was a very imperfect map because there was no discussion with the governor. He froze us out. He vetoed it. And then the Democratic majority wrote the new map and I for Congress. And I laugh because they say it's more fair. What they really mean is that it elects more Democrats. And to them, that's what fairness is all about.
You know, I have a concern. I always stress on all the shows that I do when it comes to political shows is vote for the most qualified person that you think would represent you, meaning doing homework on that person, because we could see now how we as individuals are getting affected by the politicians that we put into office. We're seeing a lot of things that are not really good as far as I'm concerned. So the problem always comes is how well do we know Dave Argo? How well do we know a person who's running for office? Now, you have made yourself available all the time and answered any question. Okay. So I look at this and say, well, you know, when you say I'm moving into territory that's Democrats or I'm moving into territory Republicans, well, what happened to the fact that, well, what about the person who's running? What are the qualifications, whether they're Democrats or Republicans? How do you view that, Dave?
Sam, it's a very imperfect process, but in the classes that I've taught, I frequently, because I give the students the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to make sure they have a very realistic perspective of this. I don't just, give them the theory, but I usually like to end up with a statement, not by an American politician, but by a British politician by the name of Winston Churchill, who saved them from the Nazis, for God's sakes. And he said, essentially, democracy is the worst system ever devised by man, except for all the others. And so it's the best that we've been able to come up with so far, warts and all.
A few years ago, Lou Barletta and John Udechak worked together on Project Shine after-school activities to fight back against gang activity in the greater Hazleton area. Hazleton area is now part of essentially what your district will be. You are passionate about the issue of blight and blight remediation. From your perspective, what role does blight play in ensuring public safety in a community like Hazleton, which in recent weeks has confronted some high-profile violent crime stories?
It's like that bowl of spaghetti. It's all tied up and demolition back to the district. I've worked right now. I'm working with a Democratic state senator from South Philadelphia on trying to get more money into the budget to help people fix up their homes so we don't have to demolish them in 10 or 15 or 20 years. And so, no, it's a critical issue. And in communities that I represent, like Shenandoah used to have 30,000 people. It now has 5,000. So, of course, there's a lot of empty homes. And sometimes it's just working with the neighbor. Maybe they would like to take over the house next door. And so they have a couple of extra bedrooms for the kids. Or maybe we need to take it down and then they're going to have a bigger yard. But yeah, it is a critical issue. I've been working at it for a long time. We've given local governments some critical tools that they did not have in the past, but it's one of those battles that it never ends. We need to work at it every day.
In closing, Senator, how do you see the state of Pennsylvania today?
We've made some progress. I like to tell people that I see people hiking and fishing along creeks and rivers where my grandma wouldn't have let me put my toes when I was a kid. We have streams that are clear today that used to be orange, and so I've seen some progress. But like I said, in the war against blight on other issues, we still have a long way to go. We have a race for United States Senator. We have a race for governor. The choices that people make this year are of critical importance. I'm not on the ballot. I just get to concentrate on doing my job. But as you'd indicated earlier, I hope people do their homework. I hope they do their research. I hope they show up at the polls, and I hope that they make good decisions.
Well, Senator, thanks for taking the time. And like I said, you've always been there available to us, and hopefully we'll be talking in the near future. We're always open to you. Standing Speaker Ken Jackson, myself, Lisa Sugard, at SSPTV. Anything we could do to promote the goodwill of the state, we're here for you. I wish you the best and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you,
All right,
Senator.
my friends, we're going to take a break right now. You're watching this SSPTV special edition. We get back. We'll talk about this critical election coming up, this special election, and then we'll be talking about the primary, who's running, and we'll talk about how they're going to, where you fit in what district and what, and hopefully we'll get things straightened out. We'll take a break right now. Well, welcome back to the special edition of Your Vote, my friends. As I mentioned before, this is a critical year. We have a special election coming up in April, and a primary in May, and then, of course, all kind of craziness. My panel today, Ken Jackson via phone, who is a reporter for the Standard Speaker. You all know him. Lisa Sugared, who was our news director at SSPTV. Charles McElwee, who is the editor of Real Clear in Pennsylvania, and of course, my good friend Rick Morelli, who was the former chairman of the Luzerne County Council and also the Hazleton Area School Board. Joining us now, no stranger to anyone in northeastern Pennsylvania. He's been around a while. He's serving his 7th term. Unfortunately, he is leaving us, and that's Representative Jerry Knowles. Jerry, thanks for coming on the show.
Sam, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Well, listen, Jerry, needless to say, we are certainly disappointed that you're not running again and that you decided to retire. First of all, why?
Well, Sam, it's kind of funny. When I get into the legislature, a good friend of mine, he was thinking of leaving, and I said, "Why are you leaving?" And he said, "You will know when the time is right." But, I consider myself to be very fortunate, Sam. It's a wonderful life. I got involved. I've been involved in public service for 50 years, actually. I started out as an active volunteer firefighter. I went on to be a full-time police officer here in Tamaqua, and I served 8 years on borough council, 6 years as mayor. I worked for Representative Dave Argel for a total of 12 years in the State of Representatives, or the House of Representatives, and currently serving as a state representative. So for somebody who likes public service, it's been a good run.
Some of the things I know that we could go on forever and ever. You've been a very strong supporter of thing that I talk about all the time, pro-life. And you know how much I applaud you for that. You're one of the few legislators that just came right out and said, look, this is the way it is. And you always stood by that. And we want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that. You've been really, really great in that area. I
appreciate that, Sam. I always tell people that to be successful in the legislature, you have to be able to compromise. But there are 2 issues that I always said I would fall on the sword for. One of them being to protect the unborn, and it's outrageous the murders that take place of our unborn year after year. And the other issue, naturally, is the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
Well, we hope and pray that someday this madness will stop. But anyway, we have the panel here, and I'm sure they'd like to ask you some questions. And Kent, if you're there, we have Representative Jerry Knowles on the phone. Would you like to ask him anything?
Good evening, Representative Knowles. Nice to talk with you. As you're retiring, so are several other lawmakers in our area. And if you think of Tara Toohill not retiring but leaving, there's a lot of open seats. But do you think it's just a natural breaking period when the census happens and the districts are redrawn, that it makes people, even like yourself, give a little extra consideration to leaving at that point?
I can only speak for myself. Quite frankly, it was a very difficult decision. I loved my job, but it was a very difficult decision. But it was just time for me to turn the reins over to someone else. I mean, I loved what I did, but I'm getting up there, and I want to enjoy retirement a little bit, spend some time with my grandkids, my kids, and just move on and do something else.
Good seeing you. I want to say, as a former Schuylkill County guy, thank you for all your work, and it was a pleasure to know you and for your service that you've done. I want to ask you more of the fact that it's more of a bigger question. The fact that you're leaving. I mean, and looking at the state of Pennsylvania and where the state is, what would be some of the things that you would love to see moving forward, our great state? Some of the things that we haven't accomplished or that we can accomplish moving forward in general, and just taking politics out of all of it.
Well, Rick, I would say to you that we've got to recognize compromise. We've got to come together. We've got the extremists on the left. We've got extremists on the right. And one of the things that I learned is, as I noted earlier, I will fall on the sword for the life issue and for the Second Amendment. But all other issues, I'm open to discussion. And, a word that was thrown around in Harrisburg for a lot of years, and that is compromise. I think we need to focus more on getting things done and, not simply being against things, but being able to get things done. It's somewhat disappointing, and there were things that I wanted to accomplish. There were things that we got done, but compromise.
The people running for the special election in the 116th, they're going to take office probably in late April, and then they're done at the end of November. And then we're going to have somebody new again. How chaotic is that? And how much can they accomplish in that short period of time that they'll be in office?
Well, I will tell you that Lisa, this job, even as a staff member for 12 years for the House of Representatives, I found out that there's a lot of responsibility when you're the person that has to push the green button. And, for the amount of time that they're going to be there, it's going to be difficult for them because they're going to be they're going to be learning. They're going to be learning where their bathrooms are, for God's sake. I mean, it's a very strange situation. I certainly congratulate Judge Toohill. Know Tara well. When she came to the House, we sat next to each other on the House floor. But it's got to be very confusing for the people in the 116th. Quite frankly, do I got that number right? I think it's the 116th district. But they're going to be voting on April the 5th, and they're going to be electing somebody. And if I'm understanding it correctly, none of the people that were nominated by their parties are going to be living in the district when the new term starts in January. So it's a crazy thing, and it's very unique. I mean, it's happened other times, but other times, maybe in my case, I come in a special election, but it was like 6 months into the first term. I still had a year and a half to serve. But it's going to be very challenging for whoever is elected in the special.
Because this is also a gubernatorial year and the U.S. Senate that we're voting for, do you think when we do hit the primary and the November general election that people are paying attention, that we'll have a better voter turnout?
Well, I believe we will have a good turnout. And, I am a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. And, I guess I'm speaking from my home, so I can talk a little bit about politics. But I think it's the Republicans to lose. I just believe that the president and the vice president and the administration, they've had their issues. And I honestly believe that it's the Republicans to lose, whether it be whether it be statewide, whether it be local. It's really ours to lose. And we're all very upset about what's going on.
Question about we're drawing to a close when it comes to Governor Tom Wolf's 8 years in office, and you hit upon the importance of compromise. And we're certainly living through this period of partisanship, hyperpolarization. that's even seen at the local level. In your view, as we conclude 8 years of Governor Tom Wolf, did he ever work across the aisle? What is Tom Wolf's legacy, and how do voters, let's say in Schuylkill County, view the legacy of Tom Wolf going into this very competitive governor's race?
It's kind of strange. I think that Governor Wolf is a good human being, and I think he is very sincere in everything that he does. But right off the bat, his relationship with the legislature was not as good as it should have been. For example, with the pandemic, there were real issues. When he started coming out with these terms of essential and non-essential, and as we worked our way even through the first budget with him, I don't think he understood the process well enough that you were the governor of Pennsylvania, not the king of Pennsylvania. And that you, like it or not, I mean, I got to say, our forefathers were very, very bright in what they set up. And, we all know that there's, you've got the legislative branch, you've got the executive branch, and you got the judicial branch. And I'm not so sure that the governor understood in the beginning that he needed to work with the legislature. And I think he has learned that over the course of years. But it's been difficult, especially in the first year. It was very difficult.
Once again, I know you have an event to go to tonight, and I understand you're the main person at this event. Is that true?
Oh, that's what they tell me, Sam. That's what they tell me. But Sam, thank you. I was talking to Lisa, and I got quite an interest in politics, and I'd like to sit down and talk to you.
You could talk to me anytime, Jerry. I'd love to have a one-on-one with you, on the Sam Lassand Show. You've always been there, and we hope that we bring information. We hope we bring, we thrive on the fact that we talk about local neighborhood programming and such shows like this, that we could dedicate information to the viewers, and, our kind sponsors help us out, and appreciate that. Jerry, stay healthy, okay? And
yep, Sam, and I got to tell you, man, I've always appreciated you. The business that you're in, I've appreciated the fact that I know how strong you are on protecting the life of the unborn, and I really appreciate you being so forward, and that there's no doubt in anybody's mind about where you're at or where I'm at, and I just want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Stay healthy, Jerry, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Everybody have a good day.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we'll break down this 116th and 117th, and hopefully we'll make some sense out of what's going on. Stay with us. Welcome back to a special edition of SSPTV, Your Vote, the special special election in April. Remember, folks, 24/7, SSPTV.com. You can watch all of our shows, including this special that we're doing. Appreciate it very much for all the nice comments we're making. Particularly, remember, in Pottsville, we're on Comcast 190. We've been there for 22 years, from 7 to 11 p.m. every day. Here in the greater Hazleton area, we're on Channel 13 and 513, and of course the Wilkes-Barre and Kingston Mountaintop area on Channel 92, 7 to 11 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. My panel today, we have Rick Morelli, who is the former chairman of Luzerne County Council. We have Lisa Sugar, who is our news director here at SSPTV, and my good friend Charles McAwee, who is the editor of the Real Clear Pennsylvania, and of course no stranger to anyone, Ken Jackson's via phone, and we're talking now about the 116th district. Okay, let me just read this. Kent was very nice to send me this. The winner takes all. This is the April election. Okay, the winner takes office, but just serves until the end of the year. There is no primary, just 3 candidates named by their parties. Paul Slawina, is that the way you say it, Lisa? Slawina, who is independent, Robert Schnee, a Republican, and Amilcar Arroyo, who is a Democrat. all live in the Valley and aren't qualified by a resident to run for full term on May 17th in the new 116 district. The old district had Hazelton, Sugarloaf, Cunningham, Black Creek, and Butler, and half of Hazel Township. In the special election, candidates run in those boundaries. Michael LaRocca of Hazel Township, however, is running as a write-in in this special election. LaRocca has a connection between the special election and the regular primary on May 17th because he is running in both. On May 17th, candidates will run in the new 116 district, which has all of Hazelton, all of Hazel Township, West Hazelton, and Schuylkill County towns, including McAdoo, Monomoy City, Ringtown, Shenandoah boroughs, and the townships of East Union, Monomoy, North Union, and Union. In the regular primary, there's more candidates running in the 116, the new 116 district, and they would be Mayor Dane Watrow, West Hazelton Mayor John Chura, Nico Makuda, and Dylan Angelo Orgorkis, Gary Perna. Cunningham, Freeland, Jetto, and the townships of Black Creek, Butler, and Sugarloaf shift to the 117th district, now represented by Republican Karen Bobeck, who isn't seeking re-election. These towns are the new 117th. Part of Luzerne County, consisting of the townships of Black Creek, Butler, Cunningham, Denison, Dorrance, Fairmount, Foster, Hollenbach, Hunlock, Huntington, Lake, Lehman, Nescopec, Ross, Salem, Slocum, Sugarloaf, and Union, and the boroughs of Cunningham, Dallas, Freeland, Harleys Lake, Jetto, Nescopec, New Columbus, New Angola, Penn Lake, Park, Schnee, and Whitehaven. Total population 61,755. Foster, Freeland, Jetto, West Hazelton, and half of Hazel Township had been in the 119 district, represented by Jerry Mullery, a Democrat who isn't running again. So I hope you fully understand that. So Ken, you want to pick up on that and maybe help our viewers of what's going on?
Yeah, summarize. Everybody's in a new district, it seems, and you won't recognize the people running because they're retiring. But there's a lot of changeover, both in the candidates and in the districts where we vote, or if you're a candidate in the area that you represent. I do think it's interesting, though, for people who like term limits and want fresh ideas in government. You're going to get a chance to see that because of the people stepping down. There inevitably will be new people who come in, and with new people come new ideas.
Rick, your comments on this.
Well, Sam, I mean, you're right. It's very confusing. And I think the most confusing thing is the special election, which is Tara Two Hills' old seat, which is a temporary seat. And then that kind of ties over to the primary. That's in April. Then there's going to be a primary for the new district. Also, with that new 117th, Bob Schnee is also going to be running in that election. And I think you misspoke, but Mike Cabell, who I know him, and I was with him the other night, he didn't say anything, but he's in the Valley. And if it's the same person I'm thinking about, he would be in the 117th. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. There'll be, as Kent mentioned, there's a lot of new faces, and it's a good thing for it, but it is confusing to the individuals of who to vote, who's going to be representing them, where they're going to, and again, basically who's going to be representing them.
Okay, my question is, Bob Schnee, who's a great guy. He's done great things in the county. If he wins, he has to run again in the in the main primary.
So if he wins the special election, he will run his term until November, December-ish. But he is also then going to run in the May primary for the new 117th. And that, if he wins the primary, then it'll go to the general in November. And then whoever wins that will then have a 2-year term.
Okay, I understand that.
So that's where it gets a little confusing because there's a little bit of an overlap.
Okay, now what's the story with Mike Cabell?
Well, if it's the same gentleman I know, he's from the Valley, and he would be in the 117th, not the 116th. The 116th is basically from our area. It's mostly Hazel Township, West Hazelton, then it goes to Schuylkill County. So the 116th, again, being a former McAdoo guy and having Jerry Knowles on and Dave Argel, that's going to be interesting because really, in my mind, I don't remember a state representative that had both Schuylkill County and Luzerne County. And so you have a lot of individuals here from McAdoo. You have Dane Watrow, you have Gary Perna, Nika Makuto, all very good people, know them personally. And they're going to, in some ways, split their vote, but they're also going to get votes from Schuylkill County. Then you have a number of other individuals like Chura and Dylan, who are from the Luzerne County, and they're going to get their votes from the Hazel Township area and Hazleton, et cetera. So that to me is going to be an interesting election because there's a lot of very good individuals, a lot of new names, as Ken mentioned, and we'll see how that all plays out.
And Rick, there's only all Republicans running right now, right? No one has declared as a Democrat. So far, only all Republicans, and they're really going to split the vote because there are so many running. So it's going to be
that's a good point.
There's anybody's game.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, really, again, if that's true, if nobody else is a Democrat, puts their name in it, then
at this point, I'm saying, but yeah.
Then at this point, then it's really whoever wins would win the general. But then that throws another confusion where people can put a write-in and all that. We won't get into that tonight. But the fact is that it does show there are a lot of Republicans out there running, and you're not seeing a lot of Democrats. That tells you something else, Sam, too.
Well, we're not going to comment on that. Lisa, you're
too bad Mike's not here to comment on that.
Oh, yeah, I miss him. I miss him. Lisa, you were going to say something?
I was going to ask Charles for his take on this because he's like the expert always writing about all of these trends and everything. Charles, how do you see things turning out up here? I mean, is it going to be a free-for-all with all these candidates, or what? How do you see it?
Well, all this is vertigo-inducing. That's what we know first. But Rick made a very important point about the 116th. I can't think either of a time when Northern Schuylkill was with Southern Luzerne in terms of that legislative district. Historically, the district lines were also Luzerne. Then it was split. Greater Hazleton was split in 2012. But in terms of electoral trends, Lisa, the state Supreme Court, which, as we noted earlier, has a Democrat majority, they upheld the state legislative district lines despite Republican opposition, including the legislature. But even though the Supreme Court upheld those lines, which they did so because it was beneficial to House seats throughout the state, they can't control the electoral reality of what is Northern Schuylkill and Southern Luzerne County, which is, this is now a red area. This is trending Republican. Luzerne County alone now has about 12,000 voter registration advantage for Dems as opposed to Republicans. That was unthinkable even 15 years ago. The fact that it's narrowing to that extent, we could certainly see the day that Luzerne County itself is a Republican majority county by voter registration. So that's why we see so many candidates, of course, running on the Republican side, because if you want to represent this area, it's in your interest to run as a Republican, which is fascinating because it was, again, only 25 years ago that Democrats would get elected. So we're seeing that realignment, and it's playing out in real time.
Rick, I want to ask you a question. You've been around in politics a long time, from school board, this council, and you're very active. So you sort of have your finger on the pulse. Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think Senator Argel mentioned the fact that it's constitutional in the sense of the changes every 10 years. I mean, I'm surprised that they do it every 10 years, and it's still very confusing. I mean, people have to wait to get their petitions out. They don't know. They got to go and challenge it. So that to me is I still don't get it. But the fact is, I can't mention, you're going to get new names. You're going to get some new people out there. I think this challenges people who, what ends up happening is that you have some people in office for a long time. And if they're in their district that people know, it's very hard to get rid of them. Changing the districts allows people to pull out. No one wants to lose, to be very quite frank. And there are a lot of people who might say, this is my time to get out because there's probably a good chance of me not winning, which allows other people to come in. And I think that is a good thing. And you get some fresh faces and new, fresh ideas.
Kent, in your experience writing for as many years as you've been writing, and you've always been, as fair as I can remember, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm just thinking with the way our primary and our redistricting was done, it took a long time, but we made it under the deadline. I heard today that Ohio is lagging Pennsylvania, and they might have to postpone their primary to later in the spring because they're still going through this. But for us, it does give a chance for new people to come in. Once you build up a campaign war chest, you have money, that really helps. When you have name recognition, that helps. And now it's like starting from square one every 10 years, and it does give people a chance to break into politics who might have wanted to, but always had too much of an obstacle before.
Lisa, do you think it's a good thing or bad thing?
Well, in one respect, yes. If we get new faces involved in it, that is a good thing. If there was a fairer way of doing it where everybody was equally satisfied. But it's going to be crazy right now, because then you have, people in the 116th voting in April. Then again, you're going to go vote in the May primary. And then there's all new names on the ballot. I live in Cunningham. I'm going to be voting for certain people in April. Those names won't be on the ballot in May. I mean, for people who, like you said, Sam, do your homework. They definitely have to do their homework, because they're going to be, shocked when they get in there and see all these different names if they're not paying attention to what's going on. So they really do have to do their homework, and hopefully they will. Hopefully they're paying attention. And that's why I asked Jerry Knowles too. I mean, this is going to be a gubernatorial year. So, I mean, how does the COVID situation all play into this? And I know Janine had mentioned to me too about, what about mail-in ballots? How is that going to play? Did people get their mail-in ballots for the special election? Did they know to get that? Or did they get them for the special election and think it was for the May primary? How's this going to be? Is it going to be a lot of chaos because of that? I don't know what you guys think of that.
Rick, what do you think? This a good thing or bad thing?
Well, like I said, it opens up doors. But, here's the thing with state reps. You have to understand, they have to run every it's only a 2-year term. So almost after 1 year of a term, they got to go back and they got to raise money and they got to do that. And I think that's a flaw in our system with the state reps.
Yeah, that needs to change. Everybody should 4 years. Everybody.
Yeah.
And a 2-term max.
I'm sorry, Charlie, what do you think? Good thing or bad thing?
The problem is, you need incumbent state representatives who have a pulse in the district. So if you have constant electoral turmoil in the sense of changes, new lines, what we're seeing essentially in Greater Hazleton, it does create challenges, and you want incumbents who have years of experience, who came up through the local level electorally, and certainly understand the most pressing issues when it comes to what's ahead, not necessarily even in the present. And certainly in Greater Hazleton, the issues in the years ahead are, as Senator Argyle noted earlier, blight. We have a mass housing inventory, population gains, housing issues, whether it's affordability or housing demands, and of course, this massive warehousing growth. And these are all issues that state legislators have to confront in Harrisburg too. And it will be really important. Whoever prevails is going to be really important for that state representative to understand the problems ahead, at least in not even 2 years, but in the next decade.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back. Let's talk about the candidates on this April election coming up, this special election. Stay with us.
Your vote on SSPTV News.
Welcome back to our special edition of the Your Vote 2022 on SSPTV. I'm Sam Lassant. Joining me is Rick Morelli, Charles McAwee, our news director, Lucy Sugard, and Standard Speaker reporter Ken Jackson. Kent, the people who are running right now for this special April primary, what can you say about them?
All right, I'll go with the person maybe least familiar to voters. He's a libertarian, Paul Kuinala, and Mr. Kuinala had lived a little north of our district. He'd been on the Wyoming Valley West School Board, but he has now moved into the Valley. He's helped with administering during the pandemic the food giveaways at Grace Fellowship Church in Hazel Township. He's taken as a libertarian, he is really upset about some of the things that the governor did during the pandemic as far as masking and vaccine mandates if you wanted to maintain a job. So he's running on those types of issues, which go in with the let's say, ethos of the Libertarian Party. The Republican is Bob Schnee. Bob has been on the Hazleton School Board. He's been and currently is Luzerne County Commissioner. He lives in the Valley, and he's a retiree of the Hazleton City Authority. Also has been a big booster of the Hazleton High School football program through his years. And interestingly, though, he was nominated by the Republicans, and this is a process done by the party leaders, not by public vote. He was picked to be the candidate in the special election, even though until just November, he was a Democrat. The Democrat, however, in the race is Amilcar Arroyo. Amilcar is best known to people in Hazleton for publishing for more than a decade El Mensajero, the Spanish language newspaper in Hazleton. He's also serving on the board of the Hazleton Housing Authority and the Hazleton Integration Program. And his is really an American story. Immigrated from Peru more than 30 years ago, picked tomatoes on his way through Hazleton, ended up staying here, worked jobs in the factories before starting his newspaper. And we do have a write-in candidate, Michael LaRocca, who will also run in the regular election for the 117th district. But in this special election, he's campaigning. He lives in Hazel Township. He has had a Snap-on Tools franchise and now operates an amusement machine service company in several of the mid-Atlantic states.
Thanks for that briefing. Very quickly, I'll go to the panel and ask you if any comments. We got about 3 minutes left. Let's start with Lisa. Any quick comments on the candidates?
It's nice to see that we have so many people interested in running. I'm glad that there are choices out there to be had, because sometimes we go to vote for an office and there's no one listed on the ballot for certain things. So it's good to see that new people are getting involved, and we'll see how it plays out. I would only say that people pay attention, so that if you do live in the 116th, you vote in April and then go back and vote again in May, and you're going to see different people. So just pay attention to what you're voting for.
Let's talk about Bob Schnee alone. I mean, he's an illustration of that political shift locally, right? He was a Democrat, now he's a Republican. He switched parties. And there was a time in the 116th district, once you switch your parties, you were punished and ostracized. And we actually saw that here in 1994 when Tom Stish switched parties and became a Republican. So it's amazing that in just under 30 years, there was a time when a guy like Stish was punished in Harrisburg and locally, and he just wins in 1996 for the 116th. And fast forward, and it's to Schnee's advantage, the present district, where he could prevail just because of the reality that the district trends red now.
Rick.
Yeah, I agree with what he just said there about the switching. But, again, I think it's going to be really interesting breaking down the numbers on election night, because you have some really, really good candidates. A lot of they got all of them have name recognition in one way or the other. I think it's going to be close, but again, it also comes down to an election's money. And so that's one of the big challenging things, where who raises the most money and gets their name out and spends it on SSPTV are going to be helping with who they're going to win with. So those are going to be some of the things that we'll be looking at in that April.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, we have an all around the town that's running every day. And that's an opportunity we have. One of the candidates there who is came up and said, look, we're going to explain what's going on. Yes, we try to make it as affordable as possible. We want to thank all of the candidates and wish them all well. Kent, thanks. I hope you're not soaked down there in Allentown.
No, great to talk with you all.
Okay, Kent. And Charlie, it's nice seeing you. Tell your dad we're going to have that lunch, I promise. And tell him to bring his credit card with him, okay?
He'll know how fish hooks next time.
Okay. Lisa, it's always nice seeing you again. You're doing a great job on the news. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for being with us, okay?
My pleasure.
All right. My friends, thanks for joining us. We're running the show, as you know, a number of times. And also YouTube. For those people who do not have cable, we're on YouTube, or go to our website and learn about what's happening in your neighborhood. We'll see you next time.